This is Jeff Knuckles for the Milestone 2 final assignment for Game 475. This is my demonstration of game engine, and I'm going to walk through the required features for this assignment and first talk about those features that have been completed. So the first thing was that we had to have at least 4 different primitive objects, the cube being one of them. So I have the cube on the screen here. Most of them are on the right-hand side. And then I have a pyramid shape, most of which are on the left side. There are like 11, 12, 13 of those pyramid shapes. And then I have an icosahedron and a dodecahedron from kind of spaced around the top, and then there's 2 of those that are spinning one inside the other one as wireframes. The next feature is instances. As you can see, there are multiple instances of each model. Each of the 4 models here, we're supposed to have at least 4 of those. I've got 4 of everything except for the pyramids, where I have like an additional 10 or 12, 10 or 11 of those, 10 of those. Instancing capabilities. So after the models, I have talk about the textures. I've used some of the textures that were in the original engine that was worked on during class, and then I've added like 3 additional textures down at the bottom. 2 of those are slate. Actually, I think all 3 of them are slate, but they're different different sort of brightness levels or colors of slate. One is a very dark gray, and one is a kind of a medium, and one is more of a purpley shade, which is very dark. You can see towards the bottom center. And then I created a few additional shaders that are just doing like no lighting and are sort of just one color each. There's a blue one and a red one, and those are just 100% red and 100% blue. I could have, mixed the colors and come up with some other thing, but I wanted to just do some basic solid colors. What I tried to do with those was to have the vertex be a different color, like white, so that you could see the edges, but it didn't want to allow me to do that. I don't know if the vertex is behind the faces, the colors on the faces, or what, because I even tried to do like change the opacity, the alpha setting on the faces, but it didn't still let the vertex shine through. So I need to look into more about how these are being drawn and what order or something in order to be able to do that, because we obviously can do the vertexes because we're doing it for these rainbow colored ones. I just don't know if the 2 things work together or not. I even thought about doing 2 separate instances that were just doing the exact same thing at the exact same time to see if maybe those would overlay on each other. But then I thought, because that would end up with the same problem. And it wasn't really a requirement of this assignment, but I just thought it would be kind of interesting to be able to see those edges in addition to having solid faces on those. The next capability is the cameras. We were asked to create a camera manager, which I did, as well as the ability to change between those cameras. And so the initial camera is the one that you're looking at here. That's camera 1. And then I've got a second camera, which is placed to the left, just to the left of that spinning rainbow colored, I think it's the icosahedron one. And you can see here that the triangles, although in the front view didn't look like it, the red and blue triangles are actually pulled back in depth, so that at least on this view you don't have everything all in one consistent line. And then I have a third camera which is at the exact opposite end facing the other direction, so that we can see everything from the right hand point of view just beyond that duckweed colored cube. So I can flip back and forth between the three cameras, and I could have added 4, 5, 6, 10, however many cameras I wanted to, because they're all managed by the camera manager. The next thing was the ability to sort of drive the camera through the scene by keyboard, which I can do from any of these views. I'll start with the third view where we're seeing the green cube. If I can turn the camera left and right, I can move the camera forward or backward. So if I go far enough, I can be beyond the green cube. So now we're just staring at the spinning icosahedron and dodecahedron that are wireframes. And I can go through those. I can back up again. I can look to the side or to the left, to the right. And then I can actually flip to the other camera. Let's go back to the front camera. And I can change the camera in this view. And I can go to this camera and go back far enough so we can see all of the objects. And zoom in, not zoom in, but move in. I've got sort of a rainbow. And now we're coming through from the other point of view. There's the cube. And switch back to camera 3. That's the other side of the cube. So we have two different views of the cube. And back to the front view again. So yeah, these are all drawn with index triangles. Something that I learned about the index triangle way of doing things that I guess I didn't pick up during the class, which was a number of the models that I found were sort of reusing the vertex points, so that you would end up with a lot shorter list of those, but you would have the same length of index list of how those all connected to each other. And from what I found, that's not a good idea, because the way that our faces with the textures are handled, they're sort of described inside of those vertex points. So by reusing them, it doesn't give you the ability to do the textures. And so a lot of the models that I found were reusing those points at the corners, at the vertex points, and made it not really possible to do textures on those, which is why I've got more just colors on some of the more complicated shapes, or just wireframes. I had a lot of trouble finding models that were in this format, which a lot of things just said to use, create something in Blender and then export it, and then use that export as your to get all of your triangles and all of your mesh, basically. But I didn't want to try and learn a whole new 3D program at this point, although I have done some 3D work in the past. It's been a long time. Let's see. Loading objects from a file. Yes, it still loads the objects from a file that were done in class, although this talks about loading the vertexes from a file, which I'm not doing yet. And somewhere else in the assignment, it talked about having these in a tree, so that when you moved one object, all of the others that were connected below it and the tree would move with it. I tried to figure that out, and I couldn't quite see how within our current framework how to make adjustments so that that would happen. So I guess that's something for the future. And then there was, I don't know if this is part of the same thing, but there was a mention of the scene and having, I guess that would be the same thing, is having the tree things move would be the entire scene being organized. It would seem that you'd need different trees, or maybe it's just that they're subtrees. Like say if you put a person and another person, you know, those two things aren't going to be moving together. If they're separate parts of the tree, I suppose you could move their upper level of the tree. So I guess the scene would be the root, and then all of the main objects would be at the top of that. I got as far as figuring that out, but I did not, was not able to get that to work of moving the objects around like that. The textures, there are some limitations and some issues with trying to make those textures as part of loading and unloading by themselves as far as like a reference count. I haven't created that capability either. I started to look into it, but then I saw that we have some sort of named by enums, and I don't know. I guess we would have to have these objects individually named and then build out the ability to look for a specific one and sort of check them to determine if there are no objects using the texture, sort of a garbage collection scheme. I did start to figure that out, but I didn't have time to finish it for this assignment, so it's been removed. I actually spent the most time trying to get the camera set up and the camera movements and the camera, the different cameras, and I had some issues with the keyboard commands because it seems like it doesn't want you to hit the same the same key more than once. I think there's a repeating capability, which doesn't seem to be part of our keyboard setup for this program. So I think if I hit it more than once, it was trying to just continually or disregard it. So I ended up having to code separate keys for each of the each of the various cameras. What I wanted to do is have a previous and a next, use P and N to cycle through them so that I could just go in a circular fashion and go previous. But the keyboard wasn't really, the keyboard setup that we have wasn't really wanting to comply with hitting the same key more than once. So I've actually got these coded to key 1, key 2, and key 3. But they're all pulling from the camera manager, and I've got one single camera that is the current camera at the current time, so that it's not trying to render all 3 cameras even though we're only showing one. So that's the end of my demonstration for this project. I've learned a lot working with the cameras and the angles and the shapes and the models and the textures and the shaders. And hopefully I will take the second version of this class at some point and continue on from here. Thank you.